Welcome back, all my drawing buddies. Today, we are going to take Venom-Mouse from pencils to inks to colors. Now, if that's something you're interested in, stick around and follow along for the draw. We'll start off with Venom. Venom's first appearance is in Amazing Spider-Man number 299, not 300. He's on like 2 full pages. He comes from a shadow. He has dialogue. And the last page of Amazing Spider-Man 299 is a full body shot of Venom speaking. And any book I ever read, that's a full first appearance. But of course, 300 has a cooler cover with the red in the 300s, even though Venom is not on it. His first cover appearance, I believe, is 315 or 316. For whatever reason, the people in charge of these things decided that 300 was the winner, and that was going to be Venom's first full appearance. I just saw a thing on Instagram with Todd McFarlane. It must have been a week or two ago, maybe. And they asked him about the first appearance of Venom, and he said that it was 298 because Eddie Brock actually appears briefly in 298, but he doesn't have the symbiote suit yet. But he mentioned everything that I said about 299 and the multiple pages and all that other good stuff. So I'm also going with the Todd father on this one, and we are going to call Amazing Spider-Man 299 Venom's first appearance. I was originally going to do this as a full profile drawing because I did one on a sketch cover not that long ago, and I really liked it. And I'm like, hey, you know what? If I put Mickey Mouse ears on this, that would be pretty darn funny. Because years ago, I actually did a drawing of Venom jumping at you, and he had the Mickey Mouse ears and the white gloves, and he also had the red shorts on because it was a full body shot, which I decided I want to crop this one in closer. You'll see when I get to his body, because originally I had more of it showing, but I wanted to crop it closer so you don't get to see his little red tights there. Venom started out as a hardcore villain. Eddie Brock was mad because Peter Parker ruined his career as a photographer. The symbiote was mad because Peter Parker rejected him, and they both got together at the same time when Peter rejected the symbiote by going into church bells, and the loud noise almost killed the symbiote and it fell off him, and Peter thought it was dead and went on, but it bonds with Eddie Brock to create Venom. In 300, Amazing Spider-Man 300, he traumatizes Mary Jane to the point where she makes Peter Parker promise never to wear the black suit again. Obviously, he does it again years later when McFarlane does his own Spider-Man series and a few times after that. But she was so afraid of Venom and the black suit that she made him promise never to wear it again. And I don't know if it was in issue 300 or if it was in his next appearance and was next full appearance in Amazing Spider-Man 316, but he terrorizes and almost kills the Black Cat trying to find out where Peter is too. But she convinces him that she's looking for him too, and she doesn't know where he is. And he had a thing back in his early appearances where he wanted to eat brains. You know, that's where the whole thing in the Venom movie comes from. He probably still does. I haven't read a Venom comic since the 90s. But he was all about eating the brains of the criminals and the people that he took down and the heroes that he killed. So, yeah, Venom didn't start out all that fun at all. I'm also not a big fan of the big tongue on Venom, even though I usually draw a mid-length tongue on him, because the way I like to draw his teeth and have his mouth open all the time kind of lends itself to having the tongue because it looks empty without it. McFarlane hates the tongue. He didn't put it in at all. I believe Eric Larson started the tongue when he took over Amazing Spider-Man after Todd left to do his own thing on the regular Spider-Man book they started for him. I also like to put his teeth in various different lengths and jaggy and more gnarly looking. Some artists do that. Some artists make the teeth really even. And if you look at the first few McFarlane issues, he didn't even do that. It was more of a Joker type smile on a black Spider-Man suit. That was the whole thing. It was just a bigger, badder, uglier, scarier looking version of Spider-Man. And I thought that version was actually very menacing because of that. It wasn't the sharp teeth, it wasn't the big tongue, it wasn't the drool, it was just a really creepy smile that went along with the big black Spider-Man eyes. And the big white Spider-Man eyes and the black suit, sorry. The pencils on Venom actually go pretty quickly. I redraw the hand a few times because I try a few different things out. And I think I settle on the next one or the one after that, but that's the thing that took the longest on all the pencils. And I apologize, I stick to the messy pencils and don't fill in all the black. I just kind of leave it loose and kind of remember where I'm supposed to have to fill in the blanks. So if I gave this to you as a pencil and you had to ink it, you would not like me very much at all. Also, I would like to say it's like 98 degrees outside and humid, and I had to shut my air conditioner off to record this, so I'm suffering a little bit for this art for you people. So I hope you appreciate it, because this is awful, because I live on a 3rd floor apartment. I also still have a little bit of that cold left from the last video where I did Gwen, which is also making me think this is my 3rd spider person in 3 months, so I'm going to have to chill out on them after this. But, so I still sound a little hoarse and a little gravelly, but I hopefully sound much better than I did in the Gwen video. So, thank you guys for sticking around and listening to my nasally sick voice while I do these voiceovers. I appreciate it very much. Also, we're going to talk about Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse's first cartoon, I don't remember the name of it, but he was actually called Mortimer Mouse. I think there was 1 or 2 of those. And then shortly after that, Walt Disney's wife said she didn't like the name, and they should call him Mickey. And the next cartoon was also the first sound cartoon, and that was Steamboat Willie. That was 1928. I don't know when his first comic appearance was. It was probably sometime in the early 30s, maybe even the late 20s in the Platinum Age. I really don't know. Mickey Mouse came along because Walt Disney and his animation partner, Oob Iwerks, or Iwerks, I don't really know how to say it, so we're going to say Iwerks, Oob Iwerks. They created a guy called Oswald the Rabbit. And Oswald was actually fairly popular, but they made him under contract for somebody else, and they stole all the rights to Oswald, and they left Disney with absolutely nothing to show for all their work in creating the character and bringing it to life and giving the popularity and the money he made. The story Walt Disney tells is he was at a restaurant. I don't remember if he said he was with his wife or he was with business people, and he just had an idea for another animated character, and he scribbled it down on a napkin, and that was Mickey Mouse, because Walt was also an animator back in the day. But the truth is, he had at least the truth from what other people say, is Oob and Walt were just sitting around brainstorming, and they realized there wasn't a popular cartoon character based on a mouse. So they both sat there and they put their heads together and they came up with Mickey Mouse, well, Mortimer Mouse, who later became Mickey Mouse. And they got to work on putting it together and animating. Problem was, Walt Disney was really gun shy on letting another company distribute his cartoons after the whole fiasco with Oswald the Rabbit, and so he started his own distribution company called Buena Vista Distributions, which still exists today. It's part of the Disney company, and they used to actually put movies out under Buena Vista that didn't fit the G-rated Disney thing. Like if it was going to be PG or something, they would put it out under Buena Vista instead of Disney. In fact, I think Nightmare Before Christmas, I think that came out under Buena Vista, or maybe Miramax at the time, because it was rated PG and it didn't fit the whole Disney aesthetic thing. So I mentioned before that I watch a little bugger. She's going to be a couple years old soon, and she likes watching Mickey Mouse cartoons. She, when things are on and she's bored of what she wants, and she tells you what she wants. She's like a shark for baby shark, and when she says mouse, she means Mickey Mouse, so we put on Mickey Mouse, and there's a couple that we like to watch. One of them is this really old school looking one. It almost looks like a Ralph Bakshi, or from the guy who did Ren and Stimpy, and Mickey's still kind of the jerk he was back in the early days, and it's kind of ugly, and it's a really fun watch, and I like it a lot. Then there's another one that she likes called Mickey Mouse's Funhouse, where there's a sentient house that Mickey and the gang go to, and in the upstairs there's doors that go pretty much anywhere in time and space. They could end up on the moon with an alien Mickey. They could end up in Greece in the ancient times. They could end up in Egypt. They could end up on a pirate ship. And they go on these silly little adventures in the house. And since I'm from a time where my uncle used to take me to horror movies when I was 7 years old, so I saw like Nightmare Before Christmas, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Chud, and the Friday the 13th movies, and the Lost Boys, and a bunch of movies I shouldn't have been watching as a kid. My uncle would take me to the theaters, and we would go on weekends, and he would take me to buy comic books. I believe I mentioned this in another video too. So in my head, I had an idea for a story for a sequel to Mickey's Funhouse, where Mickey and the gang couldn't go to the Funhouse. You know, they grew up, they got jobs, they weren't able just to go off in the woods and run into the fun house and play all day. They had to have responsibilities. So in this little crazy world of mine, the fun house gets lonely and he starts to lose his mind. And he starts to turn, instead of blue, he turns red, and he gets like an evil grimace. And campers go out in the woods and they find the house, and the house pretends to be all cool and happy, and hey, let's go on an adventure, and they go to their things, and he sends them to all these terrible horror type worlds to be frightened and killed and maimed and eaten, and it's a horror thing. And there starts to get out in town that people are disappearing in the woods and they're going hiking and nobody knows what's going on. And so Mickey thinks, oh, maybe I should go check on his friend, the funhouse, because I haven't been there in years, maybe even a decade. And, I'm sure he misses us and he's lonely, so we should go check that out. So he goes there, and it turns out, the house is doing all this stuff, and the house goes all evil, and he tries to kill Mickey and the gang, and of course they convince him that was wrong and that he shouldn't be like this, and, he basically shuts himself down and disappears into the nether or whatever. I never figured out an ending for it, but in my twisted mind, that was a fun sequel to Mickey's Fun House, where the house loses its mind and starts basically murdering campers and people who wander across them randomly in the woods. So if I could make a Mickey Mouse movie that, now that he's public domain, by the way, Mickey Mouse is public domain, you could use the 1928 and 29 versions of Mickey Mouse in any kind of story you want now, and Disney can't really stop you. I'm sure there's things they could do, but legally they can't. So Mickey Mouse is free to use. You just can't use modern versions of Mickey Mouse. So if I could animate and I could figure out a way to use that with the public domain version of Mickey Mouse, I would totally make that cartoon. What do you guys think? Am I crazy? And since I'm doing a bunch of self-doxing anyway in this video, which my friend Sif would not agree with at all, back when my son was younger, a friend of mine worked at a pawn shop, and he called me up one day. He's like, hey, somebody just came in and dropped off a bunch of DVDs I think would be fun for your son. And yeah, I'm that old. We had DVDs. And I go there to see what they are, and it's basically all the old classic Mickey Mouse and Donald Ducks and Goofies, and they were all these DVD box sets, volume 1, 2, and it started at like the Mortimer Mouses, and it went up to, I think, the 50s. I don't remember. It's been a long time. I'm sure my boy still has those. And so that was fun to watch. And the only thing I ever used to do an imitation of, because I don't do voices and all that weird stuff, but I would always do a Mickey Mouse voice for my son. Let's see if we can still do it. Oh boy, Pluto. So that's my Mickey Mouse. So you want to cut that into a clip and make me look stupid all over the internet, I did it for you. I got so caught up in my twisted tales of Mickey's Funhouse and imitating Mickey Mouse that I just realized we're already inking Venom. As you can see, I put little gray balls behind them as representation of the Mickey Mouse ears. In fact, I think I keep those as the ears, and I just put a little highlighting on them. But this Venom is also a really quick thing to ink because his hands are white, his head's black. There's really not much to him ink-wise. So we bang that out pretty darn quickly. And then we get to the colors, which also go fairly quickly. This is only a half-hour video, or 28 minutes. It's not my longest one, but it's definitely my most fun one as far as I'm concerned, because these mashups are really kind of cool. At least I think they're kind of cool, and I like putting them together. So if you guys want to see more mashups and have any ideas for mashups that I might not think of, leave them in the comments, and if it's something I think I can actually pull off, I'll give it a go, and maybe if I remember, because, I'm kind of flighty and absent-minded, I'll give you a shout-out in the credits, well, not in the credits, in the video somewhere, saying, thanks for the idea, Joe or Bob or Alice or Smith. I have no idea. We'll think of something. But yeah, as you can see, Venom, once you start adding the black, he starts to get that menacing look to him, and it's all kinds of nasty and gnarly, especially with the teeth, especially when I color them and all they're all yellow and nasty. But yeah, once you blacken in those ears and the Venom head, it's like, yeah, that's what we're going for. That's cool. And the way I draw things, they're really blocky and heavy blacks and heavy whites and heavy blocks of color. Things like Venom go super quick because he's just a lot of black with a few white lines and some highlights in them and a lot of teeth. Venom has, well, at least my Venom has a lot of teeth. And like I said, I like to have the big canines and the multi-sized teeth just so that he looks more menacing. And then, because sometimes I think Venom looks a little goofy when he has all the same size teeth and He just has a little smile on his head, and his head has a weird roundness to him in some drawings. It just wasn't my thing. I like the McFarlane one with the regular smile. I like the Eric Larson one. He's the one who got really crazy with the teeth and the spit and the giant tongue and all those. So, my Venom. Even Mark Bagley, he's the one who evened out his teeth a little bit, but he still did a really nice Venom, even though he was never my favorite Spider-Man artist, just because when you go from Eric Larson and Todd McFarlane and Mark Bagley, it's like you're going back to Marvel's house style. And while he's an awesome artist and he's done some great things, like I loved his New Warriors run. That's a good one. You want to read something? In fact, I should draw the New Warriors because a friend of mine got married 15 years ago, 10 years ago now, and he wanted me to draw him a team shot of the New Warriors, the classic team: Night Thrasher, Namora, Nova, Marvel Boy, and what's the other one? Speedball and Firestarter. And I started it a long time ago, and I still have the file, and I just never finished it. And I feel really bad, so I apologize for that, sir. And maybe one of those days I'll bust it out and I'll finish it for one of these videos, and then it won't be an actual original pen and ink piece of art, but I'll make a nice print for it and send it to you. And hopefully you'll forgive me for taking so long for getting it done. Another little request tangent is somebody who actually watches these videos all the way through, and he messages me on them all the time. Mike Stivitz, I think it is. I don't know. Like I said, I'm terrible at names. You guys could look through all my other videos to hear me butcher names. Even this video for Oob Iorks or Urks, I'm butchering that guy's name, and I feel terrible because he's an important part of animation history. If you read about him, look him up. He's pretty awesome. And he requested that I draw Taskmaster way back when, like on my first or second video. So I'm finally getting to it. I hope you like it. It's a little different, I guess. I went a little cute with it. And it's also a versus, so he's fighting somebody from DC. So there's no clear winner in this one because, it's a request. I don't want to upset the people who are making the request. But it's going to be fun. I'm going to finish it up this weekend, and I might put it up next week instead of Gojo. I did Gojo from Jujutsu Kaisen, and he was going to be next week's video, and he's all ready to go. But if I don't put up the Taskmaster next week, then I got a problem, because then we got Superman, and then after Superman, I think there's a week off or something, or 2 weeks. Then we got the Fantastic Four, and those two drawn. Well, Superman's not done. He's penciled, and the idea is ready. But the Fantastic Four one's already done. And I'll give you a spoiler. It's going to be Silver Surfer and Galactus. No actual members of the Fantastic Four, and it's the classic Silver Surfer from when I was a kid, not the Shalaba version, which I probably should have drawn, but I never read any of her stories. I actually did read Earth X because I'm a huge fan of Alex Ross, and I believe that John Paul Leon did the pencils for most of those books. I don't know if he did the one for that one. So I did have those, so I don't know if I read them or not. Well, here we are. We're already on the colors of Venom, and as I said earlier, these go by pretty quick too because there's not really much to color. I think the mouth and the teeth take the longest because there's a lot of teeth, and I put highlights and shading on them, so it doesn't take a long time, but it takes a minute, and it also takes me a minute to get all the saliva to where I want it at the end too. That was a pain in the butt, but in the end, it all comes together, and it's all fun. And I think I actually just showed the color picture instead of the finished ink, so oops. Actually, I went back and checked because if it was, I was going to take the video and I was going to fix that, and it would have taken a few minutes, but wouldn't have been the end of the world. But nope, I did not do that. I showed the inks the way I'm supposed to. So my brain was doing a little weird old Mandela effect on me. Well, that wouldn't really be a Mandela effect, but it sounded good in my brain to call it one. So as you can see, the tongue, it's big, it's gnarly. I put a little lighter pink or maroon on it, so I'll give you the idea that it's wet and nasty. And then eventually I have all that saliva dripping off too once I get that all figured out. So when I was a kid, as you all remember, if any of you listened to the whole video, and I talked about how I used to buy comic books at this little store that I used to walk to with my friends, and it's not Venom related, it's more Carnage. Well, it's absolutely Carnage related. Well, Venom's in the story too, so they both work. A friend of mine who I still go and buy comics with today. In fact, we're going to a comic show this weekend. We decided we were going to sell comic books at a local show in a church. We were like, I don't know, 16, 15 years old. And we needed stuff to sell. Like, I had like my New Mutants. I sold my first appearance of Cable. I don't think the first appearance of Deadpool is out yet. And other books that I had that were worth a couple bucks. And he brought some books, and we decided that we should have some new books that were hot. And this happened the same time that the first appearance of Carnage came out, Amazing Spider-Man 361. So I went to the little corner store that I went to buy my comic books all the time, and I brought my friend with me. And we grabbed them all. I think they had 361 and 362 up on the shelf at the time. And the guy's like, wow, you guys really like this one, huh? We're like, yeah, this is the cool new one that's coming out, so we figured we should get a couple extra copies. So the guy there's like, nobody really buys comics here except for you guys and your friends. So I got a few more of these in the back if you want them. So he went in the back and he pulled out a few more. So we ended up like 5 or 6 copies of each, which was really nice when we did that show. And I also got a couple at the local comic shop too, because, it didn't sell out instantly. And he had some, and I think I had a pull box back then. And Spider-Man was one of my books. And so we ended up with that. We sold out at the show, which that was really cool. I heard this story years later, but the shop that I used to go to, and I still go to, and I still talk to him, the guy who owns it, I've been going to the store since probably the week or two after he actually opened. And I've been going ever since. He's on his 3rd shop now. And he got his start working with another shop, a guy named, and we won't mention his name, but another guy who ran comics. And he got started with him, and he had his own shop that I haven't been to yet because I think it was a few towns over. And so I would just go to the one shop. And he made a mistake on his orders when he was ordering the books for that month. And he wrote 361, the number of the book, in the total amount you want instead of the issue number. So the distributor, I believe, was Diamond. I think Diamond was a thing at the time. They sent him 361 copies. And he was lucky because it turned out to be a key issue and everybody wanted it. And even the guy who owned the shop that I had bought some off of him because he kept selling out. And that's why he still had so many, because the other shop made a mistake on their ordering. And instead of ordering 20, 30 copies or whatever they ordered back then when comics were at their height, maybe even 100 copies, he ended up with 361 copies. So that worked out in the long run for them, or the short run, because I don't think they held on to any. But yeah, so that was fun, and I was able to get a couple of those too. I just didn't know it back then. Many years later, I stopped at that shop on the way home from work because it was on my way home, and he just took in a small collection, and he's like, hey, check these out. And he showed me a couple books in it, and it was like a Hulk number 2, and maybe it was an Avengers number 1. It was a lot of good stuff, and he paid a lot of money for it, so good on him. But one of the books was Amazing Spider-Man number 1. It wasn't a terrible condition book, and at the time it was probably worth $2,000-$3,000 in the condition it was in. And I'm like, oh, Rich, I never had a Spider-Man number 1. You need to sell me that. And he's like, what can you pay me for it? I said, I only have like $1,000, and I'd have to give you payments over time for it. And he did not accept my offer. Thank you very much, sir, for not accepting my offer, because I probably would have sold it anyway, because some stupid bill would have came up, and I wouldn't have it. But he did sell me a nice Daredevil number 1 after I sold my original one to pay for something my kid needed, like a field trip or something. And then he bought another collection. He had a really rough Daredevil number 1, like the front cover was detached, and it was a mess. But he sold it to me for a really fair price, so I was able to get my second copy of Daredevil number 1, so thank you for that too, sir. I appreciate you looking out. And we were both shocked that when I sent it in to be grading, it came back as a 1.5. We both for sure thought it was going to come back a 0.5 or a 1 if I was having a great day. But back then, I think the 1.5 was selling for like $400 or $500. I don't know what they go for now, but I'm sure it's more because since the Daredevil show and all the speculation, all that stuff, his first appearance worth a lot more than it used to be. It used to be a steal. You used to be able to get a nice copy for a few $100s, and then they put an end to that because people realized that it was undervalued. And there was another comic book store in the neighborhood that I went to. I used to be able to walk to it. It was that close to my house. But then he had to move it because they were tearing down the plaza he was in, and they built a CVS or something. So he moved to another town not that far away, but it wasn't walking distance anymore. And I was in there one day, and he had a Amazing Spider-Man 300, the First official, as they call it, official. First appearance of Venom. And I asked him how much. And he's like, oh, I'm asking 150 for it. He's like, but I could give you a little break on it and sell it to you for like 110 or something. So I thought that was a fair deal. So I took him up on it, and I bought the book, and I said, thank you. And I took it home, and that's when comic book pressing was becoming a thing. And I didn't know any much about it, but I knew a guy who did it, who I met on a forum on Facebook, I think it was. And he was all the way in Alabama. So I said, hey, man, if I sent you a book, would you press it? And he's like, yeah, sure. So I crossed my fingers, sent this book down to Alabama, and the guy was an honorable dude, and he pressed it and sent it back. And, I was looking at it, and he did a really good job, except part of it, kind of the cover rolled over the top because the cover was slightly off-centered. So I took my fingers and I rubbed it flat, and I put it back in its bag, and I decided to have it graded, and I sent it off to be graded. And it was a direct version. It wasn't a newsstand, but I sent it off to be graded, and it came back as a 9.8. So I actually had an Amazing Spider-Man 300 9.8. And that's not an easy book to get a 9.8 on because it has a black back cover and the red. You can see all the little spine ticks in that book if it has any. But fortunately for me, this one was very clean, and I got myself a 9.8. So that was the nicest copy of that I've ever owned because I have had quite a few copies of that book in my time. And I'm sure you're all wondering where that nice little 9.8 copy of Amazing Spider-Man 300 went. Well, I sold it to buy a drawing tablet. I was looking for a Wacom tablet because X Pen and Huanon weren't really a thing back then. I actually have an X Pen now that I'm going to start using for live streams. So I was looking on Craigslist. Yep, Craigslist. That's how back in the day this was. And someone was selling a 22-inch Wacom Cintiq from a college. They said they basically use it 1 or 2 times, and it doesn't really work with their workflow. So they were letting it go really cheap, I think for like $700, which was like almost nothing back then for one of those. I mean, they were selling for like $1,500, $2,000. So I sold the book. I think I got $1,200 or $1,300 for it at the time because that's what they were going for. I think they spiked to like almost $5,000, $6,000 at one point, and then they're back down. I don't know how much. But I went up there and met the guy. Apparently he was selling the tablet. The college actually bought it for him, but he didn't like it. So he was just selling it. So I guess it was free money for him because he was a professor, and it was a damn good deal on a tablet for me. So I said, thank you. And as for the drawing, you see, I'm putting my signature on it now, so we're almost done. So that's kind of cool. I think, I wasn't happy with not having any saliva inside his mouth, so we add a little more right here, and I go through a few different versions of this, but it goes by really quick. So once again, I'd like to thank you all for coming along for the draw and watching me draw Venom-Mouse. And if you drew along, post yours somewhere so I could see it. I'd love to see how that looks. And hope you liked the thing at the beginning of the video where I cheat and I show you guys the finished pencils, inks, and colors ahead of time because I figure, people drop off fairly early. Most people. I mean, some people watch, but some drop off early. So I figured that was a good way to get people to stick around and watch the whole video or the parts they want to see because they can see the finished parts of those. So yep, that's it. We're done. So like and subscribe and all that other fun stuff. And I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for drawing with me.